On my way out, I heard somebody shouting at me from a hidden corner of the club. It was an elderly man who I later learned worked as a caretaker and sentry. It seems you have taken too much years of the lion. Go clear your bill at the counter, or else I will turn you upside down. Feeling annoyed and a bit embarrassed, I complied. I walked straight to the counter and did the necessary. I was about to walk out of the den of daredevils when a bespectacled woman blocked me. Hello, sir. My name is Christine. Does that ring a bell in your mind? I hesitated and then shook my head. We schooled together, she said. Do you remember Teacher Trufena? I was thunderstruck by the impromptu coincidence. In the ensuing confusion, I said yes and no. Christine flashed a mocking smile and then held my right hand. She led me like a sheep back to the peculiarly calm club, where most customers were either too drunk or in a self-inflicted stupor. Some men who sat near the entrance were too engrossed in a heated argument that none noted my reappearance. Let's settle down here, said my companion, who ordered a bottle of Smirnoff vodka for me. I shrugged, declining the offer. I only take soft drinks, but I can buy you 2 Tuskers, in case you don't mind. As we waited to be served, Christine opened a leather wallet, from where she fetched a 1,000 shilling note. I like clearing my bills soonest possible. In this so-called no more sorrows, anything can happen. You might end up in perpetual solace. I was about to ask her why when she interjected. You of course remember Madame Trufena, don't you? My memory had now refreshed. True, she taught me English and Kiswahili. Christine took a gulp of her favorite liquor and then looked up, marveling at a ceiling that seemed to be peeling off with age. That was my mom, she said. You and I were in the same class. I peered at my interlocutor's embellished face, hoping to figure out her appearance as a young girl. There is a time my mom paid you an extraordinary visit. You were to show her a mysterious portrait that was dangling clumsily on a mud wall inside your family house. My siblings and I accompanied her. I scratched my head and then retorted. That must be a long time ago. Kindly remind me your other name. Teacher Trufena had 2 girls, if my memory serves me well. We used to call one of them Wanjiru. Could that be you? Christine removed a white handkerchief from a backpack, which she used to wipe her blow. She then poured more liquor into a huge glass mug. You are quite right. We used to pray with you at the village arena. You were, of course, too engrossed in your beloved Mihaki that nothing else seemed to matter. In her presence, you seemed to totally lose network. If the whole village left leaving you behind, life would still continue. I guess you had love, some love for her chocolate complexion. But anyway, let me acknowledge that she was pretty. I was about to ask which Muhaki she was referring to when my companion interjected. Men are funny creatures. Why, they easily get carried away like dogs in a flooded river. I swallowed hard, allowing Christine to go whole hog. She took a couple of gulps from the fuming mug, seeming a bit tipsy though. Noting my concern, Christine sought to reassure me. I never get drunk or muffle myself with ecstasy like these cheap chaps. Look the way some are snoozing recklessly, like puppies. In any case, I come here with a purpose, and not to have unfettered fun. The girl who danced with you, I hope you didn't poison her, is my student. She's doing her doctorate degree at Moi University, Eldoret. Does that surprise you? I was no doubt mesmerized by the startling revelation that got me completely off guard. I took a quick glance at the unassuming apprentice who was busy caressing a shaggy drunken fellow next to the counter. I then turned to face Christine, my former classmate in primary school. A glass that house is unusually cool during hot season, and when the weather is cold, it is puzzling warm. I said as my interlocutor absent-mindedly fiddled with a cell phone. You have not experienced this kind of magic, I quipped, in a calculated move aimed at making Christine visualize the bigger picture. Your mom used to reside at the teacher's quarters. Houses there were made of timber and iron sheets. Christine remained tight-lipped, returning keenly as I expatiated on the erratic temperatures that characterized the inside of a glass that house. I was nevertheless secretly watching her reaction. What the hell is free chaps? As if reading my mind, Christine fidgeted severely and then quipped, I am her supervisor. I lecture at Moi University, main campus. Her working here is only a mere subterfuge. She is doing research work on drug abuse. Her dissertation will mostly focus on the source, spread, and effect of drugs on the country's economic growth. We thought this could be an ideal place for her to carry out the research work. I stared blankly at Christine, completely confused. Were it not for her sincerity, I could have left almost immediately. Tell me about your mom. I mean, she must be 8. Christine removed a handkerchief from her purse that lay on the table and then wiped her blow. My mom passed on 2 years back. She was of course 8. What of your mom? I was not sure what to tell her. I pretended not to have heard the question. Tell me about Mwihaki. I prodded. The last time we met was during her stepsister's burial ceremony. That is many years back. It was my first time to experience Mata's death. I was a bit apprehensive, especially considering that Wachera used to be friendly and welcoming. Like Mwihaki, she was also attractive. It was unfortunate that she passed on at her prime age, hardly 2 years after graduating from Kericho Teacher Storage. I paused to allow Christine pour more Rika into the glass mug. She then gestures to me. Wachera fell sick shortly after her homecoming from Western Province, where she had been posted after graduating as a P1 teacher. Some critics in the village connected the untimely death to the young lady's defiance that saw her secretly get circumcised against her father's will. Her death brought the village to a standstill as mourners thronged their farmhouse to condole with her kin and kith. Christine was expecting the inevitable question. She peered at my face and then took several gulps of the foaming liquid. I told you that men are funny creatures. They only care when in need of our love and attention. Since you have asked for it, your girlfriend passed on last year. She was teaching at the University of Nairobi when it happened. I heard she was trying to secure an abortion and that she was a drug addict. Christine took several gulps and then continued. My cousin, who is the head of literature and linguistics at the Institution of Higher Learning, broke the horrifying news to her mom. I was inside Margaret Thatcher Library when my nephew called to inform me about the grisly incident. During our high school days, we would visit each other regularly whenever we went home for holidays and midterm breaks. I was at Alliance Girls High School, Kikuyu, while Mwihaki was at the not very far Loreto Convent Girls Limuru. After sitting for advanced level certificate, she joined the University of Nairobi, where I was admitted at Kenyatta University. We later graduated with first class honors and then went separate ways. Mwihaki left the country to study for a postgraduate degree course at Makerere University in Uganda and later pursued a doctorate degree at the same institution. Christine took a well-deserved break as she imbibed the foaming liquor that fizzled inside the grass mat. She wiped her face and then peeped at the peeling ceiling. Her untimely death almost shattered my life, she said. I lost a sister, a close friend, and confidant. For a whole year, I lost appetite for almost everything. Christine was about to scream when I suddenly broke into tears. I remember crying like a small boy, with no one to calm me. Christine, instead of soothing me, lost courage. She suddenly broke into a gush of tears while breathing heavily. Her students, who had been watching us from a distance, came running. Excuse me, sir, she said. What is the matter? I looked the other way and secretly wiped off teardrops that threatened to betray my emotion. It was Christine who mustered enough courage to respond. However, words failed her, forcing the university don to speak in gestures. Satisfied that Christine and I were not fighting, the researcher whose doctorate dissertation was on source, spread, and effect of drugs on the country's economy growth left the stage. After a while, Christine wiped her misty face and then looked sideways. She handed me a reserve handkerchief that I used in wiping off tears that seemed to obfuscate my vision. I have lost close friends, including family friends, she said. However, this one got me completely off balance. She again wiped the irritant tears and then turned to check whether there were eavesdroppers. But I don't blame Mwihaki, she said, after regaining her equilibrium. He belongs to the caste lot. These fellows you see here are mostly bloodlines of the Black Highlanders. It's a caste generation. I was still lost for words, and this no doubt gave Christine more leeway. She stood and moved close to me, and then partly covered her mouth as she incoherently whispered. Habakkuk denied my grandfather a decent burial at his farm cemetery that seems to haunt his descendants. I have since learned that the old man committed suicide to protest mistreatment by post-colonial regime. This reminds me that several generations have passed since that of my grandpa. My daughter's son, for instance, is in the sixth generation, while you and I are in the fourth slot. Our parents, and this you can take to the bank, are in the third row. I was lost in Wonderland when Christine poured more beer into an already filled grass mug, causing the foaming liquid to overflow. Her student, who noted the mishap, rushed to sort out the mess. Christine removed her spectacles and, after cleaning the glasses with a tissue paper, put them back. We started an organization that helps in rehabilitating these chaps in memory of Mwihaki, she said. These men and women you see here have nowhere to call home. Their parents sold all the land that was inherited from the Black Highlanders confraternity, rendering them homeless. She took a break, during which I rushed to the loo. My mission was, however, cut short by an irritant whiff of caustic smell that emanated from a filthy toilet. Christine ignored a disquieting fellow who was trying to seek her attention and continued enjoying her drink. She then looked sideways to ensure that all was well inside the pub and that her student was intact. My nephew, Professor Karanja, of course you remember his father, Kemani Jr., he who used to lecture at Makerere University and who is currently teaching at the University of Iowa in America, where he is a distinguished professor of political science, started the non-organization, government organization, early this year. I double as its Secretary General and coordinator. He said, I had by now regained my bearing. I ordered more Rika for the Moi University lecturer, which she expressly declined. Christine, I noted, was not done with bashing Kalwa's men for their misogynic and prejudiced nature. I told you that men have short memory. Do you realize that your late girlfriend was auntie to my nephew, Professor Karanja? Of course, you can chronologically see how the names seem to overlap like falling logs. To use the biblical style, Habakkuk, your girlfriend's father, hope you can see the nexus that binds us, was betrothed to Auntie Wanjiku. The pair brought to this jagged world Kemani Jr., who subsequently begot Karanja. Of course, Habakkuk had his sacrilegious foibles. From what I know, he squandered money meant for putting up a church. I hear it had been donated by some visiting white missionaries. The university scholar took yet another break and then inhaled deeply before blowing her nose. Habakkuk, I hope you are aware, unless you are the only stranger in Jerusalem, was a notorious womanizer, despite having 3 wives and several concubines. He is said to have philandered with white women who were expressly linked to the cause of his premature death. His family tree is as follows. Habakkuk had 3 wives, Waithera, Wamboi, and Wangari, respectively. That the first 2 left unceremoniously after their husband refused to reform from apparent promiscuity. Wangari, the freshest kid on the block and who seemed to stomach Habakkuk's waywardness, was mother to your girlfriend. Christine gestures at me, indicating that she was rushing to the loo. After a while, she walked back into the pub and headed straight to the counter. She whispered something to her student and then resumed her inflexible seat. By the way, did you recognize the old man who shouted at you? He used to serve at the village church. He was assisting your would have been father-in-law. Anyway, that may sound verbiage though. The university lecturer paused for a short while and then quipped, don't order more drinks. It's not advisable to overstay here. And in any case, I need to talk to my student. After allowing Christine adequate break, I decided to test my knowledge in socio-political science and prove to my interlocutor that I was also something to reckon with. I am delighted to note that you still remember me. Women have short memories, of course. We have our people in government. I mean, blacks are the ones managing the country. Why haven't they helped to address the land issue? Nobody should be either homeless or jobless 5 decades after independence. Christine took several gulps of the fizzling liquid and then faced me straight in the eyes. There was some Something about you that made girls turn whenever you appeared, she quipped, veering off the main subject. I had been monitoring your movements since we left the village. I know, for instance, that you trained as a journalist. You also flew out of the country at some point. I used to listen to your reports that were aired on BBC Radio. I guess you were based in Nigeria. Christine took several gulps of the fuming liquid and then looked sideways. Love is truly in the beholder's eye. You don't even remember trying to sweet talk me behind the school Kayapa hedge. But that is now water under the bridge. The university dawn took yet another break, during which he emptied the penultimate Tusker bottle that had taken her almost half an hour to sip. What you ought to know is that the more things change, the more they remain the same. You don't need to be a locateer to understand what is happening across the continent. We used to blame the Black Highlanders cabal for supporting white settlers and colonialists who came to take our land. Today, those whom we adored and treated as patriots, nationalists, and messiahs are worse. They seem to have an insatiable thirst for political power and accumulation of wealth. They are always busy dipping their fingers into the public coffers. She paused to allow a fellow who was passing by disappear. Political freedom, is this what you have been celebrating? Belongs to a chosen few and their colonies. As I mentioned earlier, the more things change, the more they remain the same. My companion and I finally parted ways. After what seemed a terrific reunion, for a while I kept thinking about Christine. I walked down memory lane, trying to remember how she looked like as a small girl. There was no doubt in my mind that Christine was among the smartest girls in our class. She excelled in